Hi, welcome to FS Brew. FS Brew is the region's first podcast focusing on all things insurance and insurtech in the UAE and the broader Middle East. I'm Ranjit Philip. I work with a boutique consulting firm where I work on M&A, funding, and go-to-market support for startups and tech companies.
Hi, I'm Vidya. I'm the founder of Forward, a startup that works with insurance companies to build their go-to-market digital propositions. In today's episode, we have with us Renée McGowan. We spoke to her. She's the CEO of Marsh McLennan for Middle East, India, and Africa region, and has held various senior roles and is currently a board member of Mercer as well. Now, it was a fantastic interview to get into an insight of a leader that's managing such three diverse and large chunks of regions, very diverse in and itself. It was great to see her leadership styles as to how she approaches them, how the team remains quite sufficient in the way they approach global yet local, that sort of thing. So that was pretty interesting to hear from her. Ranjit, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think she spoke about how she has to delegate, can't micromanage, and that's the way
Correct.
you have to empower your team. And really, she talked about listening and acting on what she hears from the countries and so on and so forth. I think the other point, obviously, that stuck out is Len AI, their own internal generative AI solution that they're offering to their employees. And basically, it's fantastic to see that they're taken a solution, branded it, and Len AI is very catchy. And they are exposing their employees to a technology which is being used by probably by their clients and by the world at large. So if you're used to that technology, you provide better advice and you'll be able to study the risks and provide advisory to manage those risks. So I think it's a great move by them.
Absolutely. So, all in all, we hope you enjoy listening in.
Hi, Renee. Welcome to FS Brew. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Ranjit. Lovely to be here. I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Absolutely. We start with this traditional kind of question that we ask to all our guests. And it's basically, how did you get into this career? Why insurance? And very interested in your career choices and the decision making process behind it.
I've heard most of your panelists or people that have been on your podcast talk about getting into it by accident. My route was a little bit similar, but via consulting. I've been in consulting for a number of years, and that's where I started. And a consultant there really to organizations around their employee benefit programs, retirement savings programs around the world. And then I was with Mercer for 20 years. Mercer is part of the Marsh McLennan group and worked in a number of different locations around the world, moving from consulting through general management, and am now based here in Dubai and leading Marsh McLennan across India, Middle East and Africa.
And this is a fairly large region to manage that. That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for our listeners who may not fully know the depth of work Marsh McLennan does, can you explain what an international insurance broker like Marsh does in this region and the regions you manage especially?
Marsh McLennan is a broad portfolio of professional services firms that work across people's strategy and risk. And of course, the risk element is in Marsh, who is the world's largest insurance broker and probably well known to many of your listeners, particularly in that we operate around the world in 80 odd countries. The IMEA region has 80 countries in there. And of course, all very diverse with regards to client needs, marketplace, etc. India, quite different to the Middle East. And then Africa, quite different again within itself. So really providing commercial risk solutions, industry-focused brokerage, consulting, claims advisory services, technology and analytics to help clients to manage their costs as well as improve their protection and also increasingly create effectively social change with a lot of the large projects, infrastructure projects that are related to national agendas.
Okay. Awesome. And interesting that you mentioned Africa. It's people think of Africa as one monolithic unit, and it's really 60 plus countries, if I'm not wrong, or 60. And so it's interesting. On that note, it's a large region, and let's talk a little bit about leadership styles. Now, you said how you moved from consulting and had multiple general management roles. So, how has your leadership style evolved from that time as an early manager in Mercer to being part of this broader unit where you're almost forced to delegate, right? So in this region, you can't get in with so many countries, right?
You absolutely can't. Yes, 18 countries in the portfolio and all hugely different. You wouldn't last a day if you tried to micromanage, because of course you wouldn't even and get through the day. And I think from my journey, that's probably been one of the bigger things that I've learned. As an early career person, I was probably similar to a lot of people. You want to do the very best you can, and you think that you can only do the very best that you can. And as you expand and start to manage other people, you can tend to micromanage a little bit. So I was certainly guilty of that early in my career as well. You learn though as your portfolio gets broader that working in that way isn't sustainable, nor does it deliver the best results. So my leadership style, I think over the years has evolved, influenced as well by global experiences, but it's evolved more to being very focused on being transparent with people, being open with people, and always having an open door. And I've definitely realized along the way that as a leader, your role is to make sure that you have the very best people in the organization and around you that you could confidently delegate to, that are confident and committed to the organization. And that's really where you can have impact in an organization. So it's been quite a shift for me, but an amazing journey in Marsh McLennan, where it's such a diverse portfolio of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice, absolutely. And I think we've touched upon this a few times now already. You are managing really three diverse regions, right? Middle East in itself is diverse. India is, I think, really diverse. It's a world by itself, and Africa. Now, tell us one country itself to manage the risk and compliance and the regulatory, the game that's there it in itself is a challenge. Now, tell us about the landscape of these regions and how do they vary? How are they similar? And how do you go about it?
Yeah. So it's definitely a 24/7 job, both for me and for compliance. That
Yeah.
said, I do get balance, but it's a lot with all of those diverse countries. I'm just back from India, so I'll start there.
Right.
India is going through such massive change and progress. From an insurance sector perspective, it'll be the highest growth amongst the G20 countries over the next 5 years. Expected to grow at about 7.1% over the next 5 years, which will be 3 times the global average there. So there is an enormous amount happening in India. That's bringing together private sector participation. It's also bringing in new distribution capabilities. And then we're seeing a significant amount of change in operational efficiency and also go to market, even with InsurTech. And so in India, we're seeing a lot of robotic process automation and AI, spinning that into InsurTech and into the B2C market from an insurance coverage and distribution perspective. But then we're also seeing the public sector increasingly look for increased protection across all of the population there. And so we're seeing and expect to see more progress with regards to access to healthcare, increased protection there for a very broad number of people as opposed to the select number at the moment. The regulation there is very robust. I had a very strong regulation there in the insurance sector with the IRDA for many years. They continue to evolve and to move at pace, really align with the align with the growth, and also to focus on making sure that we've got the capital support that's needed in the insurance sector as well. The Middle East, and you would know this well, being based here as well, is also diverse, but across the GCC, we're also seeing significant growth in the insurance industry. And of course, in the GCC, that's led by big markets in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Again, huge growth in those areas, fueled a lot by infrastructure and the investment in infrastructure that's happening. And also supported again by increasingly robust regulations. So both of the central banks are obviously involved in the insurance sector in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And then we've seen Saudi Arabia, for example, recently introduce a new insurance authority, which will provide even more depth to the sector there, which will be great. And then Africa is, as you mentioned earlier, it's a mixed bag of a lot of countries. If I focus predominantly on South Africa, which is the largest from a global insurance market perspective, it's also seeing a lot of growth in core industries that remain there around mining, also in infrastructure, also in trends that we're seeing for increased protection amongst individuals as well. And of course, a long-established infrastructure and protection there with the FSCA. Regulation-wise, they're all well supported. The growing markets, the super growing markets of India and the likes of Saudi Arabia will continue to get even more depth into the regulation. And so long as that's complemented by private sector input, I think we'll see very strong growing insurance markets there and far more diversity of the protection available.
Right.
And I suppose because some of these markets are at different stages of regulatory evolution, there's a lot of learning and future-scaping that some of your compliance managers can do by just collaborating.
Yeah, that's right. We always, Marsh McLennan, in all the sectors we operate, have great relationships with local regulators and local governments as well. Because of the scale, we try to input into the regulation that's needed or what will be valuable into market. And pleasingly, regulators and governments tend to turn to us for some of that opinion as well.
Okay, great. So now, off late, we have seen in the last 12 months that we can't do an episode on FS Brew without talking about impact of Gen AI. And I think you touched upon it a little bit. So how is Gen AI being used in Marsh McLennan, or how will you use it? Is it hype or is it real?
Oh, I don't think there's a conversation that's happening in the business sector anywhere that doesn't involve Gen AI at the moment, certainly. And certainly we're talking about with our clients and we're seeing the way it's being used already. I think I differentiate two things. One, AI isn't new. AI has been there for a very long time, decades, in fact. And if I take our Marsh McLennan businesses or Marsh in particular, we've been using AI in the way that we serve and deliver to clients for many years. Gen AI and generative AI is, of course, far new, and it's become broadly accessible in a very short period of time. ChatGPT is about 15 months old at the moment here in 2024, and of course, become widely accessible to people as well. Marsh McLennan has been fabulous in terms of embracing that and super proud of the way that we've done it. Obviously, we work with clients and protecting our clients and their data is paramount in everything we do. So we have our own generative AI solution available for all colleagues. So for 90,000 colleagues around the world, we call it Len AI.
Yeah.
It has all of the functionality of ChatGPT, et cetera, but it is within our secure environment. And what this does is enable our colleagues to experiment as well. When you've got 90,000 colleagues, Gen AI isn't going to evolve because one person or one executive team found the right solution and invested. It's going to take a myriad of flowers blooming across the organization and then some deliberate decisions around how you invest for scale. So we have Len AI available now for all colleagues. Usage is huge.
Okay.
Integrated it with our Microsoft tools so that it's there as part of every day, if you like. And importantly, what we're focused on now is how do we improve the solutions that we provide to clients that will be essentially data-driven. So how do you use Gen AI for data ingestion? How do you use it then for the insights? So that when we're consulting with clients, advising clients on their future risks and their marketing, we've really got all of the data to hand to be doing that will enable better coverage, better pricing, and of course, innovation within the insurance sector as well. Our Oliver Wyman group obviously does a lot with clients in this. Oliver Wyman's the management consultancy firm in Marsh McLennan. John Romeo, who's a partner at Oliver Wyman, has a great quote, which I think is applicable for all of us at Marsh McLennan at the moment. He says that as machines become machines, humans are going to get better at becoming humans as well. And so for us, it's all about how do we enable Gen AI so that we can use all of the skills and capabilities of our professional services colleagues to be providing even more sophisticated advice for our clients as well.
Fantastic.
Very interesting. So when you have Marsh championing Gen AI and then you transfer, obviously, that sort of acumen back to even the insurance ecosystem, like you said. So the insurers who typically are very slow to adopting new technologies. So it's great to know all of that. Len AI is quite catchy as a name, by the way.
It's been really catchy. Our colleagues have embraced it around the world. I'm using it for everyday work as well as solutions to clients. But you're absolutely right. The insurance sector is a very old sector in terms of the length of time that's been there. That means the complexity, the way that we processed in the insurance sector has been in place for such a long time. Now there's going to be a massive shift to actually move to driven, even dare I say it, paperless, as old as that sounds. There is a lot of work to happen there in the insurance sector.
Absolutely. Now, Renee, stepping out of, say, AI and looking at the globe, the insurance industry is square and center in the middle of climate change that's hitting the world, right? So we are the ones who insure the risks, right? And in many cases, for example, in the US, you're seeing insurers stepping out of some of these lines of businesses because it's become too big to handle. So what role do companies like Marsh McLennan and even the wider industry can play in mitigating and preparing the world with sort of these volatile climate risks that we are seeing? And we also know that you have participated in COP28. Maybe you can throw in a few takeaways from that as well.
Yeah, sure. COP28 was a great coming together of the very best minds to focus on the challenges that we have around climate. There was good progress, commitment to transition away from fossil fuels, commitments to the loss and damage fund. There's a lot that needs to happen to actually realize those commitments. And I hope that is the focus of both governments, institutions, and organizations today. I think Marsh McLennan plays a pivotal role in a couple of areas. One, it's about influencing how we manage this transition.
Mhm.
So how do you manage the climate transition that needs to happen in, say, energy transition? How do we also manage the adaptation that needs to happen in communities, like right down to that community level?
Mhm.
And then also, how do we manage the financing elements that's required to be able to manage a just transition? So we work with clients every day in these areas, and particularly in the Middle East, for example, we're doing an enormous amount that is frankly world leading in helping to stand up new renewable projects, to explore new infrastructure for delivery of renewable energy. And of course, all of the work that's happening requires insurance protection to be able to get off the ground, particularly
Yeah.
these large scale infrastructure projects. And the Marsh is able to provide that. Guy Carpenter, from a reinsurance perspective, is providing capacity in new ways for that very large infrastructure that's there. We also work with clients at an individual level, quite often on a large scale as well, to help them to understand the impact of climate on their business. Now, primarily, the great example is around supply chains.
Mhm.
So how do clients actually address their supply chains and how they're likely to be impacted? And this is where the power of all of this data comes into play as well, so that we're effectively able to work with clients to stand up a sort of twin environment for them, where we can take their business and we can project out the impact on their existing supply chains.
Yep.
And then we can help them to map new supply chains and help them to also put in place the protection that they need to be protecting their business. And so that's a big piece of what we're working with clients on at the moment as well. And then the last piece that I'll mention is around climate and the finance of that. That needs to happen at a lot at the government level, and that's realizing a lot of these pledges. But it's also right down to enabling these projects. Now, that might be enabling the large infrascale projects by having the right protections in place, or it might be also has a very large investments as part of the portfolio. So looking at how we can channel climate finance to support the stand-up of these significant climate change initiatives. So we're doing a lot, if you like, at that macro global level, at the government and advisory level, but then also working alongside clients to protect their business today and to advise them on how to protect it into the future.
No, perfect. I think that's a good point on financing. This is a patient, long-term financing that usually is left to large players like yourselves and government. So I think that's an important role as well, isn't it?
Yes, and the costs that are going to be required, the finance that's going to be required is enormous.
Yeah.
Understanding how to prioritize that, where it goes to, understanding how we manage the impact on communities that are not able to manage the adaptation themselves or to invest in what they need for renewables and so on for the future. All of that is the areas that we need a lot of advice and progress, and then action as well.
Fabulous. But it was very encouraging to see a whole lot of insurers participate quite actively in the recent COP28. So it's just good. And it also allows a lot of product innovation from carbon perspective, carbon offsetting perspective. If you look at it from a B2C or from a day-to-day for a customer of today as well. And I think there are a couple of new startups as well that are doing a lot of work around that. So it's just great to see that.
There is, and so we'll see more of it. The insurance sector is going to play a very important role as
Yeah.
we manage climate transition. in real time in terms of the impact that we're seeing from the actual extreme weather events, and then right through to how do we transition our energy? How do we actually move to an environment where we're able to live with higher temperatures because it seems to be inevitable, as well as all of these extreme weather events that impact societies.
Absolutely. And talking about those high risks, we happen to read Marsh McLennan's 2024 Global Risk Report, which is very well written and just generally highlights very nicely the risks, the short-term risks, the long-term risks, and how that would impact how we underwrite risks itself. Now, tell us, for the regions you oversee, what are those short-term, long-term risks, especially in the Middle East, since we are here, and what is Marsh McLennan doing to address them?
Sure. So our global risk report, we've been working with the World Economic Forum and with Zurich for over 20 years to deliver this now. And it provides enormous insight into the immediate risks over the next 2 years, as well as the future risks over the next 10. And it's interesting, you wouldn't expect necessarily that there would be that much change when you're talking about global risks at such a large scale, but we do see a significant change. And in 2024, one of the most pronounced changes was actually around the rise of the threat around misinformation and disinformation, particularly generated by AI, as well as the impact of extreme weather. Now, both of those can be explained very well. Extreme weather there is a top risk because, of course, we had our hottest summer in Europe. We've just hit the 1.5 degree Celsius increase, and we need to try and limit that. So those extreme weather events are now real, and nobody can dispute that they're real. And that's moved that into that short-term immediate risk category. The rise of misinformation and disinformation is something that was very new. Last year, we saw a key risk in the top 5 there around the polarization of societies.
Mm-hmm.
That translated this year into not just the polarization in societies from a geopolitical perspective, but also into this misinformation and disinformation. So just to summarize, that top 5 risks were extreme weather, the AI-generated misinformation and disinformation, the societal or political polarization, cost of living, and then cyber attacks. So top 5 are areas that Marsh McLennan is advising our clients on every day, which is why we're so heavily invested in being the advisor around these global risks. And I've mentioned already how we're working with clients on extreme weather events and impact on societies now, impact on supply chains. But then we're also working with clients on how do you improve your cybersecurity? How do you protect? And do you need cyber protection as well? So we're working with clients in all of those areas. But it was a very interesting year this year to see this change that's there, and the fact that we're looking at an environment where we've already had a fair amount of skepticism in terms of who do we trust from an authority perspective. That's likely to increase significantly as the amount of information increases, the misinformation increases, and we don't really know who to trust in what we're reading and absorbing.
And while you were speaking, I was just thinking, I haven't seen really any product that addresses that directly, but so there's something that insurers need to probably shape up.
It's something to think about that could impact. It could impact in a variety of ways. It will impact, obviously, at a geo level. We've got half of the world's population going into the polls this year, into some sort of an election. That's going to create an enormous amount of information. And so how do governments help to decipher or help to ensure that there's accuracy in that? I don't know what role the insurance sector can play in that as yet, but as that translates into perceptions of businesses, perceptions of new projects, perceptions of the impact of projects on things like climate, I think the insurance sector is going to have to play a role, most certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, from that bit of a sobering kind of commentary.
It was sobering, and it comes every year, but then you look at these global risks, but you also have to look at the fact that some of them are very real, and so action becomes a far higher priority, if you like. You also have to look at the fact that the demographics are changing. So the younger generation that will become the leaders over the next 10 and 15 years of governments and businesses are actually more acutely focused on these global risks such as climate, such as AI,
Yeah.
that I think will actually impact positively.
No, for sure, for sure. Now, when we looked at your sort of career and resume, you held senior roles for a number of years and being part of boards and have reported to boards. There's always, even if you're the boss, there is a board to report to, as I keep telling my clients. So many young insurance leaders might say, okay, I want to be at the top table one day and I want to have manage a board. And founders, they are exposed to boards whether they like it or not as soon as they get funding. So
Exactly.
just from that board management and understanding point of view, what goes into keeping a board informed? How do you influence them, take them along? And also on the other side, what are the skills required to be a good board member and a supportive board member?
Yeah. It's a great question because a lot of people do aspire to boards. And of course, as you mentioned, when you're in the insurtech space, as soon as you've got funding and you've got a board or you've got investor stakeholders that's there, I think that's one way to think of it in terms of in any role that you have today, whether it's a management leadership position or whether it's on a board, you will have diverse stakeholders. And so thinking about how do you influence and work with diverse stakeholders is really important. With regards to the insurance sector in particular, I would say a few things. The first up is that insurance knowledge is very important, but it shouldn't be the only criteria that's there as well. Actually, having diverse industry experience and having good knowledge of different industries is what's needed at a board level. And the second point, again, understanding the core elements of running a business, a P&L, accounting, how do you manage people, compliance, all of those things are important. But as you move from a leadership position to a board position, your role is to work on the governance around those, not to manage the business day to day. And I think that's an important piece if you're aspiring to a director to know is that it's quite different to running a business when your focus needs to be on the governance and asking the right questions to govern and direct the business. The third thing I would say is that soft skills are critically important as well. Soft skills really, I'm talking about your ability to relate to people, to understand them, to manage diverse stakeholders will be critical. And why that's so in board, because your role as a board member is to govern, but it's also to support the business and its executives that's there. So do you have the soft skills to engage with your fellow board members, to be able to make the right decisions and direct the company, but then also to be providing where it's required or asked that coaching and support for the executives or the leaders of a business to be helping them to manage through the day-to-day, learn the skills that they know. So I think that's a few things: diverse industry experience, thinking about all of the elements of and getting the experience of all of the elements of running a business, and then also those soft skills that are needed there for diverse stakeholders.
Very good.
And just on that whole leadership itself, if with the career that you've had, you've got obviously the roles and bigger roles and so on, but that would have come with significant amount of leadership challenges as well that you must have faced. Tell us about it and tell us how did you overcome them?
I think any leader has a significant amount of leadership challenges, both in their history that they've worked through and learned from, and in their day-to-day, and then no doubt in their future as well. It's part of life. And as you become a leader of a more diverse portfolio or a broader portfolio, you can expect far more of them. And I think also with the pace of the way that we live, the pace of change, the pace of information at the moment, you could also expect more challenges as a leader. It's a tougher time, I think, to be a leader today than it was, say, 10 years ago. I think for me, if I have to pull out some specific examples, obviously managing a broad business through the pandemic was extraordinarily challenging for me. I was living in Hong Kong, managing Mercer's business across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously had thousands of colleagues to focus on making sure that they were safe and supported and that we had everything in place and that we were able to move to being fully remote overnight, literally. But then also we had millions of employees that we served through the organizations that we provide employee benefits for. So we provide healthcare benefits for millions of employees of our clients. And so then it was helping all of our clients for how do they support their employees? How do they make sure that their employees have access to the healthcare services they need and the protection? So it was a double whammy, if you like. It wasn't just our own business, it was jumping straight into clients' business. And the way that, I've learned from these things is that you've got to be a really avid listener and learner. You've got to really quickly jump in and listen to your clients and learn from them and ask questions to understand how you can support them. You need to do the same with your colleagues, listening to them, not making assumptions about what they need, listening to what is needed in their local. And then also, I think as you're doing that, quick decision making is also important. In our world where everything happens so quickly, delays in decision making can actually be more detrimental than making a decision or making a wrong decision, if you like. It's better just to make sure that you're moving with the pace of the markets and your colleagues and not holding anything up or giving ambiguity in a world that's actually got enough of it already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And Hong Kong was in a pretty lockdown stage at that time. So that would have been interesting from a personal point of view as well. Wow. Okay.
It was. I was responsible for China. And of course, we were in the pandemic from January. It was from the start of January 2020 there. And it was then in by March that the rest of the world moved into it. But we've already lived through it in Asia and, if you like, and put in place all of the mitigations and everything we needed to protect our business and colleagues very early in that piece. But it was definitely a challenging time.
Sure. Now, stepping back a little bit, you touched upon decision-making and speed of decision-making. Large companies are often criticized that you guys are going to be slow in the terms of moving with the times and innovation and stuff like that. Although I suspect, because you talked about Len AI, you guys are not like that. But do you consciously as an organization have to put in processes, or what do you do for keeping that innovative gene within you and bringing that culture out?
Yeah. Marsh McLennan is a 150-year-old company. We date back to 1871, the Great Chicago Fire. We had to evolve and innovate for 150 years to still be relevant and still be the company that we are. So I think it's in the core, in the DNA. By no means are we, like any large organization, perfect. Once you're a large organization that's, in our case, 150 years old, you've grown through both organic growth, through inorganic growth, acquiring different companies. You've got different systems. You've got 80 plus countries that you operate in. It's a complex business. And that's where every business that is large and global gets that reputation, if you like, of being a little bit slower to change. I think, like most organizations, Marsh McLennan has got a number of different things in train. We've always looked at hubs for innovation, and do we have specialists whose role it is to be continually looking at the market, experimenting with new technologies, experimenting with new client solutions. And we do still have some of those hubs around the world. But as technology in particular has become more democratized and the access to Gen AI is democratized, we recognize that we need innovation from at the very smart people that work every day with our clients. So that's where we're providing the tools like Len AI that I spoke about to let colleagues innovate directly in the way that they work. And then also they then start to think about and to work with their clients and deliver some of those solutions that will improve the services we provide to clients. What we have to do then as an organization is to try and take stock of those. We don't want to control it. We want all of these flowers to be blooming at the moment.
Yeah.
But we do then make very rigorous decisions about where we invest. So where do we have a solution in a market for a client that's going to be really impactful for their business and the way that we can serve them? And then how do we invest for scale? And that's where we'll over-index to an investment to stand that up quickly and to then be able to integrate that in the way that we serve clients at the moment. A myriad of approaches, but I must say, Len AI for us and the way that we're using Gen AI in talking to clients and engaging with clients every day is a great example of how a very large organization can still innovate and deliver more value.
Absolutely. Because you spoke about just want to know, is there any direct way you engage with insurtechs or invest in them at all?
Yeah, we do. Well, obviously, in a number of ways. One, where we're very connected to InsurTech, and we want to both understand what's happening in local markets. And we also think very openly around the way that we could partner or work with different insurtechs. We have, of course, acquired insurtechs over the years, many of them in different markets. But really for us, we think about what could be complementary. We've got such a large commercial broking business in Marsh. What could be complementary that our clients need and will value that will improve, the services we're delivering to them?
Sure.
So we're looking at the market. We operate with different insurtech hives and everything in all of the markets that we're in. Our people who are usually insurance professionals throughout their entire career also work as advisors for many insurtechs to help them to be able to deliver that innovation and to deliver their career experience in that sector to help them to progress further. So I think that's the key ways that we're interacting with insurtech.
Excellent.
And how do the insurtechs apply to pitch to Marsh? Is there any specific email address or website? Will it be very useful for the listeners to know the process?
Yeah, we don't have a methodical process for it. Again, as a global company, we tend to let countries work most with that. So at Marsh McLennan, anybody can talk to us via our website or any of our social channels that are there. But to reach out, I would say that in many of the markets that we're in, a lot of people that are starting insurtech are also out of the insurance industry and tend to have connections to colleagues as well. And so things bubble up organically like that.
Okay, gotcha. That's great. I think we've come almost to the very end of this section of the podcast. We wanted to know, what are your plans and visions that you've shared with the team at Marsh McLennan, specifically regarding its role in the evolving risk advisory landscape?
Our objective for Marsh and what we're focused on is how do we continue to be the risk advisor of the future? So how do we work with our clients around their protection needs today, which are increasingly complex as they have to change their everything from supply chains to impacts of climate to impacts of cyber insecurity. So how do we work with clients today, but how do we help them to thrive through the advice that we're providing about their futures? So that's where we're really focused on deeper industry expertise that can advise clients into the future. What are the changes that we're seeing in construction sectors? What are the changes that we're seeing in energy and power? And how are we bringing more innovative services to help them to protect their risk and their business into the future? So really focused on that role as the risk advisor of the future. And then to support that, of course, we need the very best people. The IMEA region that I'm responsible for is, of course, growing. So we are always looking for the very best talent in market to be working with us. And then we're always looking and making sure that we've got the very best training and development programs in there so that our colleagues that are working with clients are really the best in market and advising on their risks and the future.
Great. So that brings us to the fun side of the podcast section. We are calling it rapid fire. So it's essentially to get to know the leader, we typically tend to ask very industry-led questions, but also we want to know the person behind the leader itself. So it's just a fun way. We typically want one word or one sentence sort of an answer, punchy, quick. So therefore, rapid fire. So if you are ready, shall we have a go?
Should I be nervous? Or?
We don't know if it's fun for the person who is answering. It's definitely fun for
I was wondering whose definition of fun this was. I'm ready.
We're certainly having fun. So I'm going to ask 5 questions and then Ranjan will follow. So what's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career?
Surround yourself with the best people.
Nice. One word to describe your leadership style?
Transparent.
Nice. Favorite city for travel?
Paris on a sunny day.
Nice.
Wonderful. And what's your favorite book or a blog or a podcast or YouTube video or documentary or any TED Talks that you would recommend the most?
At the moment, I'm actually just releasing my own first book. So I must say that's consuming a lot of the time. So we've just launched the book I've authored called The Friday Email, which is 88 tips for aspiring leaders. That comes from the leadership style of being transparent. But I must say that's been a bit of a passion project that is consuming most of my time at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we both read, we saw that you released the book, and the first thought that came to my mind is like, how is she doing it? She's managing these three chunky regions. How is she doing a book as well?
I must say, I may have underestimated what was involved in writing a book. It may have taken a lot more of my weekends than I had anticipated at the start.
Well, more Saturdays and Sundays involved in that.
Far more Saturdays and Sundays. And my husband and my kids said, can you please start committing to doing this?
No, but kudos to you for sticking to it and doing this. A great job. What's the most exciting tech innovation and insurance that you are following?
It's data ingestion and Gen AI. Critical, frankly, to bring out old school insurance and insurtech together.
Perfect. So I'll fire a few at your way as well. So most inspiring entrepreneur or business leader?
Who was the New Zealand Prime Minister, political leader, but very good. Angela Ardent, who did leave Burberry, was VP at Apple, is a business leader at high style as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She made those Apple stores, those beautiful places to visit. Yeah, so
exactly right. She's hugely innovative and very inspirational as a business leader.
This is a bit of a tricky topic. As a leader, do you prefer work from home or work from office?
Hybrid. Big fan of hybrid.
Okay.
We have 3 days in a week that colleagues come in so that we have the buzz of working with teams and the innovation, but then we can do quiet time when we need it at home as well.
That completely makes sense. So you're not letting go of your offices anytime soon then? Okay.
No, still have offices all around the world and still have a lot of buzz and energy in them too, which is great.
Perfect. I think we have tackled the top priority, but if I just force you to say one word, then what is the top priority for Marsh in your region in 2024?
Innovative advice.
Okay.
Innovative advice. 2 words.
Perfect. It's hyphenated. We take it.
Excellent.
And what would you say is the biggest risk you've ever taken, personal or business?
First international move.
Okay. Got it. But it paid off, so it's good.
Pulling kids, husbands, families, everybody together and taking a gamble on a big job. It's a gamble.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's
paid
right.
off.
Excellent. So that kind of brings us to the end of the rapid fire round and also the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with us, Renee.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated it and good luck continuing this. We need this important dialogue around insure and insurtech as well.
Thank you.
So